Welcome to the Rooted in Light podcast. I'm your host, Tuesday Rivera, and I am here today with my dear friend and fellow goddess devotee, G. Christo. G is a lot of things. Comedian is one of the things, which is really exciting. And I have to admit to you, like the first time I watched your stand-up, I was really, really nervous. You know, it was kind of one of those things like, what if she's not funny? And I really, really like this person. But hilarious. All right. So stand-up comedian, yoga instructor, organizer, or would you say that you're an organizer still? Does that feel true?
I think the way I like to organize people in the way I move, but I'm not an organizer right now.
Got it.
Yeah.
So maybe a refugee from the political organizing field.
Yes.
Might be a way to put it.
Recovery from it.
And one of the people I find is the easiest and most enjoyable to talk to about goddess, right? I feel like, you know, sometimes when I talk about goddess, I'm like, are you with me, friends? Or like, do I have to be careful? Or can I say this thing? And I just find you to be like just a joy to talk with, even when we're talking about the harder goddesses, which of course we're going to do a little bit of that today.
Yes.
So, but let you introduce yourself. What would you say about who you are?
Such a great question that has been really in flux for me in the last 2 years. Like, who am I?
Right.
Great. Who am I? What's happening? You know?
Yes.
But yeah, my name is G. I live in Boston. I, like you said, I'm a yoga instructor. I'm a kids yoga instructor. That's one of my favorite things to do.
Oh.
Yes, middle school kiddos are my favorite.
What?
I love them. They're so awesome and weird and ask incredible questions and just I really relate to the way that they're finding their body in space. My yoga journey. So that's one of the most my dreams to do that almost full time.
That's shocking. To want to work with middle schoolers.
A full body no to
I know. I'm like, wow. Yeah. No, you know what? It's a full body no for myself, but a full body yes to that being in the world.
Yes. They need it, you know? And with these kids that I'm working with right now, I have them doing restorative yoga. So teaching them how to come in and meditate and do visualizations. And, you know, even though they're teeny people, the world is really stressful. So I like to give them a little de-stress ramp.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, I actually think it might be a lot more stressful for them than for us.
I think so too. Can you imagine being 12 right now?
No,
you know what I mean? The world is just on fire, literally.
Right.
And there's I can't imagine it. And these kids, they get so much pressure put on them. There's just so much expectation, you know? And it's just one of the best things that I do all week, for sure.
I love that. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming. And I invited G to the show because I want to talk about goddess and I want to talk about full on, let's go in. One of the things we say is that goddess is like a diamond with 1,000 facets, right? That she has all of these different faces. And the more you know her, the more faces you see.
Yeah.
And so, because I think that when we hear the divine feminine or we hear goddess, there's automatically an image that comes to mind for most of us, right? You know, I might guess that it's kind of light or soft or loving or, and you know, this podcast is called Rooted in Light. It's not that I'm not down for that. I'm happy to have a gentle, loving, nurturing goddess. It's just not always been my experience that is a face that she leads with or that is even actually available to many of us. So we'll go there. I'm going to put a pin in that because I want us to go there why some of us actually have a hard time kind of with the softer goddesses. Yes. But I would love to know from you, whatever you want to share, how did you first come to know goddess? And what was the face or the facet that she showed you?
Well, I think when I think back onto when I didn't have language for it, I think nature, just being in nature, that feeling of just being on the ground and feeling your feet in the sand or feeling your feet on the earth and looking up at the trees and just the way that the wind blows and it feels like you're being waved at by the trees, you know?
Yes.
And then reading Sally Kempton's book, also just being so affirmed of that natural sparkle that I feel has happened back to me. Yeah. And just so I think that was the first real path. But, you said you love talking to me about goddess. Like, you have been an incredible portal for me into understanding what that is and what that looks like, and seeing the multiple different faces. And, I think in the past couple of years, I come from like Catholicism, right? And so and as a queer person, like there's just a lot of like just negativity affiliated with spirituality, I think. And so in the past couple of years, just being able to like turn to it in myself, in my body, and also in the natural world, and build a relationship with her like that has been pretty profound. But I also think, let me take the pin out, the dark face, like the dark faces, they know me, I know her in that way. And, just I've been through a lot of transformation and transition in the last couple of years. And, most of it was chosen, right? But also she invited me to it pretty directly. And so, yeah, that's what I would say about that. But yeah, I think nature continues to be just like, and now I'm relating to it, we talk about soft goddesses. Now I'm relating to it in like a divine mother way that feels really soft and beautiful. But yeah, I would say nature and just like staring down the barrel of my life and making decisions are probably like the two places that I met her the most.
I love both because it feels like both of the extremes. I mean, I don't want to give away your story, but like you have the extreme of like, oh, nature, beautiful. And I actually agree that this is the place that many of us do find her, is in nature. It's the place where we can begin to open up to a sacred that isn't bound by a church, that isn't bound by a dogma, that actually is unable to be looked away from or discounted, right? Like you go and you look at a tree, or you stand on the edge of a cliff, or you stand beside the ocean, and there's no doubt that there's something larger than you at work, that there's something divine there. Now, whether you call it God or goddess or nature, what I find interesting is, and when we do the divine feminine classes and when we begin to talk about it, is to insert this idea that there is a feminine aspect to that nature. And I'm also obviously going to ask you about that. And people that can actually be like a real portal for people, especially those of us who come from patriarchal religions, right? Where God is a man or a father or whatever we would imagine. But that to begin to identify nature having some kind of femininity to it is a real opening in. So you've kind of got this beautiful, awe-inspiring, bigger than me, all-encompassing, and then you've got the hard goddesses. And again, like, so you've had the nature, but then like God has burned your house down. So you called it an invitation, right? Like I just want to say, this is how G rolls. She's like, she invites me sometimes, So, but like, for real, sometimes her invitation can feel a little like coercion.
A little bit. And, so, oh God, yeah. So the thing is, the house burning down was the bookend of an insane year of my own transformation that was chosen, right? Like it was, I was engaged to be married and had an experience, like a guided experience where my intention was to be with my body and drop into my body and just like be present with that. And dropping into that, I was like, oh, this isn't what I want. Like, this is blocking me from knowing my deeper self. And I think in that moment that was her, but I didn't quite have the language yet. Like that was sort of like the kickoff or whatever sports analogy you want to use. And then from there, she just continues to show up. Like and particularly for me, my relationship with my body has been a fraught one that has contracted and expanded for my entire life. And part of that journey that was kicked off the day I decided to call off my wedding was a journey with my body. And as I started listening to myself, I was aware of all of the misalignment that I was surrounded by, and that maybe at one time served me, but I realized wasn't serving me anymore. And so I called off my wedding. I dropped out of graduate school. I left my job that I had been at for 5 years, this company that I had helped build and like really dedicated my life to, because my body was like, we can't do this anymore. And then 3 days before my last day of work at my job for 5 years, my house burned down.
Uh-huh.
And it was just sort of like, oh, you want a fresh start? Like you want to start with a clean slate? Okay, great. Here it is. You have nothing.
I'm not laughing.
It's insane. Like it's a hilariously insane thing to happen, right? Like it's insane.
It did feel like, as a person who was friends with you, it did feel like it was like shed some more. Nope, you're not done. You got to give up more. You have to give up more. And up until the very place you live is going to go to, and the things you felt important. And so as you said that, I thought, well, no wonder people aren't all that interested in the divine feminine. Like, why would I want that path?
I know.
Why would I?
I want to be like, whenever we're in the goddess class, or I'm just like, it doesn't have to be like my experience. It can be different from you. Like, I don't, I'm a little relentless, and she seems to see that in me. I'm one of that facets for her. And so, and also like, I was deeply connected with Kali right away.
I was going to ask you to speak a little bit about what goddesses specifically call to you.
Yeah. I mean, that she was just like there. You know what I mean? Like it was just an archetype that I understood, and then that like swallowed me whole is how I feel.
Yeah.
And I was worshiping her. Like I was praying to her. I was talking to her. And so it's like, all right, like if you're going to keep coming around, I'll give you the master class and I'll burn your house down, And like, I'm not victim blaming myself, but like I was in.
But you asked for it, is what you're saying.
I kind of asked for it. I did kind of ask for it. Yes. Because, it was a deeply traumatic experience that I'm still in the process of unpacking. My housing in the last year has been a whole fucking thing, or my housing in the last year has been a whole thing. But like, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Yeah. From the deposit from the fire that I got back, I paid for my yoga teacher training.
Wow.
I was off of work it ended up being 6 months, which is longer than I planned and financially could have handled if I had to pay rent. And just really gave me the spaciousness to do some really hard work on myself that I had to do. So even though it was traumatic and it was intense and it was a flashpoint, I feel like I don't want to say I'm grateful for it, but I'm grateful for what happened and how it proceeded, I guess.
Well, and it also really bears out this idea, especially when you hear this about Kali. I heard this about Kali from my teacher, Sally Kempton, who was like, she doesn't take anything you need. She'll take what you want, right? Yeah. You might think you need it, but she doesn't take what you need. She only takes, she takes everything but what you need. And so like this idea that your house burns down and the deposit you get back is enough to do this yoga teacher training. It's like, it's not a coincidence.
No.
Right? It's like just enough to get to the next step and see what's next for you.
Yeah. And like, you like told me that, right? Like before the house burned down, before all of it, just like in the beginning, that didn't even seem like the beginning at the time, right? But like in the beginning of the spiral of this transformation I was in, that was one of the first things I understood about Kali, is that she doesn't take anything you need, right? And so as stuff started to fall away, as things, or I was holding on tight to certain relationships or certain identities, right? Being able to trust that like, if it's for me, it'll stay. If it's mine, she'll let me keep it. You know what I mean? Was really helpful. And then I got to do a final exam on that concept at the end when my house burned down. And I was like, I guess there's a lot I don't need. Great. Excellent.
Oh my gosh.
But can I ask you something about that? Because
Please.
I've been thinking about that phrase a lot recently, because I have my partner's mom passed away. And we have been deep in conversations about goddess. It's one of, and so I said that to them about something else the other day, and then I was like, "Ooh!" I was like, "That feels hard." And so, like, how do we? What do you think? Yeah, what do you think about that?
What do I think about that? I think that, and I will speak with about Kali directly, just because I also have a relationship with her.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes she's really fierce and the love she brings to us, the medicine she brings to us is not anything we would ever want or could feel grateful for or see the perspective of, or you know what I mean? Like it's amazing that you can be here talking about your house burning down and we're laughing about it.
Yeah.
And I think that your partner will go on.
Mm-hmm.
She may think that, or they may think that they need their mother, and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
find out that they have what they need. Now that might mean they continue a relationship with their mother beyond the grave. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not
It's not as
but I
black and
think
white.
right,
Yeah.
but I think your partner will find out that they have what they need, and I just want to say this is why it doesn't do to over romanticize goddess devotion.
Right.
Because sometimes the medicine she brings you, especially Kali, is like a really bitter pill, right? Yeah. And so, and we know that about medicine.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes, like I think when I think about my own childhood abuse, like I am very clear that that wasn't something that just happened or even something that she allowed to happen. I think it's something that she brought into my life because that was the crack open,
right.
And the degree and the severity of the crack open that I needed to let a certain kind of light out. Now, like you're saying, I'm not saying I'm so grateful or it was all worth it or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I have trust and devotion to a goddess who knows more than me. And so with her hard, bitter medicine, my faith in her says that there is a reason, even if I will not see it or understand it or even know it in this life. And, like this is part of goddess being, the 1,000 facets. Like she's not just the good facets, and you can't be faithful enough for only good things to happen to you. Like, Kali is also, we talked about this. Kali is also the wildfires that are raging in California, right? She, she's like that, like if the earth is a goddess and our mother, if we just use that, sometimes like she like rises like a dog and shakes us off like fleas. Do you know what I mean? Like that is also like part of it. And so like I love talking about the different faces of goddess because I think, like there are the beautiful and light faces. I think there are the sensual and sexual faces. I think there's like the romantic love faces and the motherly love faces and the dark faces and the violent and warlike faces, right? Like all of that is part of her. And so, but that's, to me, that's the mystery, right? It's like I don't get to just like pick and choose what I want. If I'm devoted, it's all here.
Right. Yeah. It's like grappling with just how there's so much beauty in the world. Like there's so much, for just speaking for myself, like there's so much beauty in my life. There's so much beautiful connection. There's so much that I'm so grateful for. Right. And there's also horrible things. And we're also living in a world where there's horrible things happening. Right. Like, and you can't, well, everybody can do what they want, but I can't believe that I believe it's all goddess. Like I believe all of it is her, right? And it's like you said, like it's not just the cute things. It's not just the transformative narrative arc that I'm able to spin for myself,
Right.
And so, but it's complicated, right? Like, because I don't think we learn about God or faith like that, right? It's like pray to the man who's standing up there with the Eucharist and everything will be fine. Oh, you didn't pray hard enough. Now there's bad stuff, and like, that's just not how it works. But it's just so deeply, I don't know, I'm on this whole arc right now about like how deeply human it is to just like love really big and also experience loss so large.
Yes.
Can't have one without the other, which is so annoying. It's so annoying. I don't like that.
So annoying. And we're all looking for that path, right? Like if I just find the path, if I can just like narrow down on the path, then I'll figure out like I won't be hurt anymore or the world will be better or, and that's actually, it's like a mature spirituality that says No, it's all here. It's all her. Tantra says, and this is one of my favorite things, that goddess is a spider who weaves the world with her web and then lives in it. And so every part, everything that's happening, every single thing, every good thing, every bad thing
Yeah.
is her. And so this idea of actually being with that rather than saying like, no, I don't like that. I mean, of course we're humans. We're not, like we have divinity in us, but like we have preferences and we have choices and we have hurts and we have ills and it's not anything like that.
Right.
But it's like, we really have to contend with like, this is it. All of it is her and
Right.
all of it is us. And I feel like once we kind of understand that all of it is her, we can actually move into our own darker sides, right? A little bit easier, right? It's like, because as long as if we're rejecting it out there, if we can see even some of the negative things out there, I think about it like, when I think about it, it's like she paints the world with all the colors. And I don't like all the colors.
I don't like
You
them
know
all.
what I mean? Like, I don't love them all. I'm
No.
not a big fan of like a yellowy brown green. I don't love that color. No, I don't like it. But that's one of the colors she painted with. And so like, here it is. And that's just, and if I'm honest, I probably got some yellow, brown, green inside of me.
Yeah.
And so like, how do I work with that out here and how do I work with that in there?
Yeah.
I feel like I've tangented a little bit, but
No. I mean, I totally hear what you're saying. Like, and I love how you just did that. The external, right? There's like yellow, brown out there, but also, by the way, it's kind of inside you too. Like there's dark parts inside you too. And whether it's the same manifestation, right, is it doesn't have to be. But I think, that has been my experience with Goddess, and is feeling her outside, having a relationship with the archetype, having just, understanding that like I'm worshiping Kali, my house burned down, XYZ. But then I'm now in this like deeper edge of the spiral where I'm inside myself about it, where I'm finding her inside myself.
Say more about that, please.
Oh, it's a whole freaking thing. It's a whole freaking thing. Just to be honest. Yeah, I think it's funny. I feel like I've always been a pretty intuitive person, and without having a name or understanding of what that intuition is. And I think I'm still like, everything is her, right? But there's also different manifestations versus like internal voice, her just being very direct, or, ancestors, right? At my back, being there, supporting me through it. Like that's her too, right? But I'll share that I was on a medicine journey a couple of months ago and was in relationship with Goddess already, like, had her on my altar, talked to her, prayed, all of that, was trying to figure out what my practice was, and had this moment where I dropped into my body and like talked to one of the little me's, and we like had a whole conversation, and she was like, all right, let me introduce you to everybody else who's in here. And I was like, she was like 3. I was like, what, are you in charge here? And she was like, yeah, that's the problem. And I was like, oh, got it. Got it. Thank you. Thank you so much. So cute. And yeah, so in that way, I like met a bunch of the versions that live inside of me. And from that experience, being able to hold them in love made me understand how Goddess holds me.
Whoa.
And
nice.
Right? I
That's
know.
great. That's
pretty
great.
Cool. And just how she relates to us with love. And that can be in the way that like I was able to hold younger versions of myself, and it's in the way that I'm able to hold younger parts of myself accountable for ways that they show up sometimes still today as a 32-year-old person.
Sure.
So that was like a real portal moment for me into understanding the internal ways in which like to embody her is to be with yourself and all of the versions of that, and that having practices that give you access to your own quiet are devotional practices to her, which I didn't fully understand. Yeah, until that moment, which was really, really cool. And yeah.
I think that's really great. And I want you to talk a little bit, if you wouldn't mind. So one of the ways, so I think, there's a conception. Of course, we always want to pick one, but there's a conception of like the ways of relating to God or goddess, as we talk about here. Like we can relate to goddess as that. Like when we talk about like nature things, like there's like something out there that's like awe-inspiring. Goddess as that. We can think of goddess as thou, which we've talked about with Kali, like this personification, this archetype, this like object of our devotion. And then there's goddess as I, right?
Yeah.
Or as self, right? And that is when we begin to understand our own divinity. And like you said, understanding, like just what you just said was like how you got to understanding goddess as I through goddess as thou. Like I can hold my parts as she holds me, right? And so a more patriarchal understanding would say you have to pick. Is God that? Is God thou? Or is that God I? Which they would never say God is I. But, and I think the mystery of working with the feminine is it's all true, right? It's all true. It's no less you than nature, and that there's actually no difference, and we're just kind of like moving into understanding or feeling goddess from different perspectives.
Right.
And I want to ask you about your practices, because I want to let people like get really practical. Let's say they listen to this and they're like, oh, I'm kind of interested.
Yeah.
How would I begin to pursue a relationship with goddess? But so I want to ask you about that. But I want to say that before we go there, that she really comes to you when you open yourself up to her. Two things. One is like when you open yourself up to her, like it's like she is like a mother, and that she's just waiting. Right. It's like, she's just waiting for you to say yes. And she's like, I'm here. I've been here.
Yeah.
I've been here. And then you're going to realize how she was here. So there's this bit of like, as soon as you reach, she reaches back. And she reaches in a way that you can tolerate often at first, right? Like it's, so just to kind of name, like, and I also have my very dramatic goddess story. Not my house didn't burn down, but I did blow up my life.
Metaphorical house burned down, I think is fair to say.
I just blew up my life. That is true. But first, she came to me with a very loving message that was that was a balm for a wound that I've carried with me my entire life, right? And so she'll meet you, just to say out loud. So I want us to go into practices here. And look, you and I are going to talk about goddess every time we meet, and there'll be more and more talk. We don't have to be exhaustive here. But just to say, like, she'll meet you where you are.
Yeah.
And often she's going to meet you in a way that you can receive her. She may not, maybe she'll burn your house down first, the thing. Maybe.
But like, that's how I was asking to receive her. You know what I mean? Like that was the intensity of it, I feel. Yeah.
So I agree. And I am also an intense person. And so I have no difficulty meeting her intensity. I would say I actually have a more challenging time accepting her softer faces.
100%. 100%. That's 100%, right? And that for me is related to practices, right? Where like I came into understanding in that journey about my inner me's that like I was born into the temple of worship. Like my church is my body, both literally and
beautiful.
The metaphor of like my inner sanctum, right? But like when I came into understanding that, first of all, I got a picture in my mind of the Vatican, and I was like, that's hilarious. I was like, I'm a little sick. How much do I think about myself,
I love it.
But it was dusty. Like it was dusty, And so that to me was the message of like, you need to sweep. Like stop trying to like, do an 8-part ritual with 16 candles. Like, can you just sweep the floor? Like, can you just do the basics?
Yes, great.
And I was like, that's boring, but okay, fine. So it's boring. I don't like it, but I did it, and I still struggle with it. Like I don't like meditation that much. Like I like how I feel afterwards. I like the access that it gives me to myself, but to get me to sit down and be still I don't like that. But it's annoyingly effective. It's just annoyingly effective.
I love that you just said sweeping,
Yeah.
I just love that, right? Because it feels, because you begin to find the divine in the mundane, right? You
Yes.
begin to actually understand that everything you do could be part of devotion. And like you said, it could be a beautiful 8-part ritual. I have done mandalas in the
Yeah.
woods. I've, done all those things. But I also wake up in the morning and look at my feet and feel gratitude.
Right.
That's part of my devotional practice to Goddess, is like
Yeah.
looking at my own feet about to step on the earth. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think step lightly, sometimes I think step gratefully, sometimes I just think, wow, wonderful feet, whatever it is. But it doesn't have, right, here they are. But, so there's something here about like going into nature and like actually feeling grateful is a devotional practice.
Yeah. Feeling
Singing a
awe
song.
too, like
Yeah.
feeling awe in
Yeah.
nature. I like is you just look around, and I have a relationship with a couple of places that I return to, and just seeing the seasons, like seeing the evolution and the gratitude for that is her way of teaching me about my own seasons and my
That's
own
right.
change.
That's
And
right.
yeah, and sorry, you were gonna say.
Oh, no. I was thinking sing a song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like music can bring you into an experience of Goddess. Like it's just like what painting,
Yeah.
writing, there's so many things you can do that are just really, really simple practices that don't have to be, oh my gosh, I'm a devotee of the Goddess and here are the things I do because, right? It's actually just like, I think, again, if we think that when we reach for her, she's reaching for us, and the practices become quite simple.
Yeah.
How do I ask her what to do next in my day? How
Yeah.
do I light a candle at an altar? What,
Yeah.
like, what are the simple things?
Yeah.
Anything else you would say about practices before we do a little closing?
Well, I think it's something that I'm really coming into understanding as I'm like deepening my relationship with the more mundane, smaller, quote unquote, practices. Is just like it serves my relationship in the way that it serves my creative life force. And I'm understanding the diversity of what that
Mm.
means now. Like, I feel like since I've been in like a, better relationship with sweeping my internal floors, I'm feeling more inspired to just like draw. You know what I mean? Like, I'm feeling just
Ah.
inspired to create things and to have different kinds of relationships. So it's just it's mundane, but the flow of energy that I have received from it is as big as any kind of ecstatic experience that I could have, but I still don't like to do
Wow.
it sometimes. I just want to
Right.
be really clear about that. Like sometimes I just don't want to do it.
Right. It's not
So,
like, bah!
yeah,
I mean, like, great. I'm so excited.
exactly.
Um, I love that. It gives me an idea of a practice to send people home to. But I always say at the end, I let people ask me, is there any question you want to ask me? I mean, we've been in conversation. So, but
Yeah.
is there anything that you're like, hey, I want to make
Mm.
sure I ask her that?
I want to know what practice you were going to say. I'm curious. I want to hear more about the
Mm-hmm.
practice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was thinking if people were listening and whether you have a goddess practice or not, or a connection with the divine feminine or not, let's play with this kind of like a mystical and mundane. Like, so the invitation would be before you listen to this podcast again, hopefully in 2 weeks when the next one comes out, that you seek to feel awe in nature somewhere. That actually you just make a point of going out into nature. And I'm talking about like I'm looking out like my side window. I live in a neighborhood, right? It's a beautiful little neighborhood, but like I actually could just go out to the tree outside and feel a moment of awe. So you could go to someplace very beautiful that you feel awe easily, but the invitation is just to go into nature and allow yourself to feel awe. It could be light on the water, it could be wind through your hair, it could be a tree or an animal. So I'm kind of calling that like the mystical. Like that,
Mm-hmm.
like hopefully you'll feel great after that, like okay, you have a moment of awe. And then to also work to experience something in the mundane, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like to just begin to notice something you can do, or to do something small, brushing your teeth, sweeping the floor, combing your hair, taking a shower, picking up groceries, right? And just begin to feel into how that act of caring for yourself or caring for your house or could be an act of love and devotion to yourself or to the people around you. But so that we don't get too tripped up that goddess is only in the big. I want you to feel it because that's excellent. Let's also try to find a spark of the sacred in the mundane, whatever that looks like. So it's just like 2 things, big, little, and just see. That's all.
Yeah.
See how it
I love
feels.
that. I love that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the homework.
Good. Yes. So this is the point too, right? Like I will do it as well, right?
Okay.
So whether, like absolutely, like I'm not, so this doesn't have to be you're new to goddess. Like all of us could benefit from that.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like
sure.
I'm thinking like, how do I begin, friends? The technology of this whole thing is such a thing for me. I'm like, how could I bring a little devotion or sacredness into this practice of being with technology? It's going to be a hard one.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious for you. I just, for the people listening and watching at home, there's no greater enemy to Tuesday Rivera than technology. It's true. I've witnessed it with my own eyes. I've experienced it. And you did such a great job setting up the mic. Look at it stay up and everything.
It stay up.
It's great.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. Last question for you then. Yeah. Okay. Because we're going to wrap up. But last question is, if you were to be like, hey, I kind of maybe want to think about this goddess thing. So we gave them practices. Mm-hmm. Is there any other resource, song, book, article, anything else you might say? Maybe you could start here.
I would say Sally Kempton's book it just cracked open my heart. Like feeling so seen in those first pages, and the way that she talks about goddess was essential for me. Although but if you're an audiobook guy, the audio book person it's offensive. Like it's like she's
really
whispering the whole time, and it makes it makes me want to die. So just a preface on that.
Okay. This is Sally Kempton's Awakening Shakti. So just says Sally Kempton's Awakening Shakti book. You need to read it, not listen. Apparently,
yes, don't listen to it. And then it's a more indirect route, but I would say goddess. I would say tarot. Just for me, like a really powerful way to start like listening to myself and discerning into my own intuition and discerning into her guidance. Yeah, I think that, and also just like ask for her to come to you. Just ask for the directions, right? Just be like, I'm interested in this, and just see what happens. See what comes forth to you.
I love it. So we're going to have you back to talk about tarot and goddess for sure. Yeah. And so listeners, that'll come this year. So we'll do that. And I really like that. Just ask. Just ask and then like remain open to what happens. Yeah. Thank you, G, so much. This has been great chatting with you. I can't wait to have you back on. Yes. Please, if you have any questions, podcast@tuesdayrivera.com. We're happy to show ideas, feedback, reflections, any of that. Just send it to that address. I know that this is a point where I should people say rate, review, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, okay, cool. Do that. But mostly if you like it, share it with somebody, right? This is, I think, the big thing here. If you like this show.
Drop it in the group chat. Be like, what do you guys think about this?
Right. This woman said her house burned down. What are they talking about?
What is happening? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, G, thanks so much.